Tonight we're continuing our discussion, and this will probably be the last week that we'll be talking about emotional sobriety and step four, and um, and especially looking at emotional sobriety through the lens of the 12 and 12, which is what we've been doing. I just want to remind everyone, I always like to kind of set the stage and remind you and me that the steps work in a very, 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 what I would call, they're grounded in an organismic wisdom. And it's, if you think about it, is this principle kind of really underlies, our life and all of our behavior, which is this: you develop a charge, an interest, a desire, a need, and then you mobilize yourself in some way to take care and satisfy that need. In Gestalt therapy, they just call that the cycle of experience, right? Is that as a need arises within us, we become aware of it. Then we, mobilize ourselves. We pay attention to how can I get my need met given the circumstances and the situation I'm in. We take an appropriate action. I'm describing a healthy person now, an action that's aligned with the possibilities in reality that we perceive. And then, either we satisfy that need or we grieve the loss of it, or they'll grieve the fact that we're not getting that need met. And if we do either one, whether we grieve and experience the loss or whether we meet the need, that behavior completes that desire. It finishes it. We take care of it. And when we take care of it, now we become available to what's next. You've heard me say before that now is always moving to next. There's no such thing as just staying in the here and now, because now is not static. It's very alive. It's dynamic, and it has movement, always movement forward, unless we freeze ourselves, unless we stop that movement for whatever reason. And when we do that, we stop the cycle of experience. But the steps are based on that same idea, that we develop a charge, as you've heard me describe in step one. The charge is we're talking about now the first step, which is the step where we're looking at, how we've created this unmanageable life. And we realize that we're powerless over this. This is what we've learned, and how we've learned to show up in our life has created this situation we're confronting, and we don't have an alternative yet. So we realize this isn't working, but we don't have anything else to hold on to. That experience of step one and accepting step one in that way creates an existential crisis. That crisis now creates a new charge, right? It creates a charge that needs to be resolved, because you just cannot live in a crisis all your life. So step two comes along and resolves that crisis by giving us hope. Step two is all about, being that we can be restored to sanity. But faith without action is meaningless. And so now step two creates a new charge. I really want to discover a new way of life. I don't have any idea of how to do it, but I know that there is a possibility out here. So what do I have to do that? See, that's the new charge. I have hope, but now hope needs to attach itself to some kind of an action. And then step three comes along. And now step three, we make a decision, right? To this new way of life, to finding a new way of life that is not based on this emotional dependence, that's based on learning how to grow up. As you've heard me say before, we're not sick, we're stuck. We don't suffer from a personality disorder, we suffer from a growth disorder. That's our problem. We're stuck in our growth, in our development. And this 12 steps are wonderfully designed to help grow ourselves into what we can be. And so now we're on step four, right? We've made a commitment to find this new way of life. Right after we make that commitment, that creates a new charge. Okay, what do I have to do? Step four comes along and says, okay, Make an inventory, make a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself. And that's where we're at right now. So now we discharge that charge that was developed in step 4 by sitting down and taking an inventory. But as we talked about, we're not only taking a first step, we're taking a second, fourth step. And I'm going to share some slides with you so we can talk about what this looks like when we think about it, doing it from this emotional sobriety or emotional dependency perspective. So let me share my screen with you guys. All right, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. In discussing step 4 in the 12 and 12, Bill says this: the most common symptoms of emotional insecurity are worry, anger, self-pity, and depression. We could say the most common symptoms of emotional dependency are also worry or anxiety, anger, self-pity, and depression. To take an inventory in this respect, we ought to consider all personal relations which bring recurring trouble. You see, we understand emotional sobriety to be becoming aware of our patterns and our habitual ways of thinking, feeling, and reacting to a situation. Our patterns will reveal some very important information about how this emotional dependency has shown up in our lives and the impact that it's had on how we interpret the meaning we give to the experiences we have, how we interpret what's happening in a relationship, the degree to which we take things personally, our reactivity to situations, our lack of thoughtfulness, and our more impulsive behavior when it comes to dealing with our feelings. By looking at these things, by becoming aware of these patterns, we start to be able to discern the degree to which our behavior is determined by this emotional dependence. And that awareness becomes a prerequisite to change. You know, as we say, the paradoxical theory of change says you change when you own what you're doing and how you're doing it and how you create your existence, not when you try to be something you're not. That's the paradoxical theory of change. Bill goes on to say that questioning directed to this end might run like this: looking at both past and present, what situations have caused me anxiety, bitterness, frustration, or depression? Appraising each situation fairly, can I see where I have been at fault? Did these perplexities beset me because of selfishness or unreasonable demands? Or if my disturbance was seemingly caused by the behavior of others, why do I lack the ability to accept conditions I cannot change? I mean, ponder that for a minute. You see, what we're learning in a real essential component of emotional sobriety is this self-searching, is being curious about our behavior, about wondering what is going on with me? How come I'm reacting the way I am? What does this mean? You see, in this way, we start to develop a whole new relationship to our experience. Instead of our experience being either good or bad, right? That's that very, very immature thinking, right? That low differentiation or low emotional maturity creates this black and white thinking. I'm either good or I'm bad. I'm right or I'm wrong, right? It's all that kind of stuff. I'm feeling good or I'm feeling bad. I want to feel good. Feeling good is what it's all about. See, when we start to transcend that immature consciousness and we start to develop a more mature consciousness, these kinds of questions become very important because it changes our relationship to our experience. Instead of it being something that's good or bad, it's something that can help me discover important things about myself and who I am and where I am in my development. It can help me pinpoint what I need to do to continue to grow myself up. You see, it's simply stated, the program is a people grower. I mean, it grows us in incredible ways. You know, I've had the good fortune of witnessing a lot of people in my 50 some years around recovery and working with people. And it's remarkable what I see happen in people's lives when they, quote, get it, right, unquote. We're going to focus on resentment tonight. I want to show you the next slide, I think, first before this one. Yeah, that's the one I want to show you.
If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root of it some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand. Let us, with God's help, continually surrender these hobbling demands. Then we can be set free to live and love. We may then be able to gain emotional sobriety.
So this is the second first step. The second first step is about examining every disturbance we have, great or small, and searching out the root of it, meaning the unhealthy dependence and the demand that's associated to that dependence. You see, the way to think about this is that our emotional dependence that grew out of our basic anxiety that weren't going to be loved and accepted, right? So we were dependent. That dependence now came up with some kind of if you will, it made a demand on reality, a demand that reality should be what we want it to be for us to be okay. Now, because we couldn't walk around and tell and claim our demands on people, because everybody would realize how unreasonable we are. And none of us want to seem unreasonable. We want to all seem like reasonable people and good people. So we're not going to be demanding anything of each other. We're going to expect that people do things a certain way. So we go ahead and dress up a wolf and put sheep's clothing on it. The demand that we have becomes, we convert it into an expectation, because that sounds a lot better. If I said to Julia, I demand you do this versus I expect you to do that, doesn't expect sound a little softer and a little bit more reasonable? But really it's not, because what we're going to find out is that our expectations are grounded in these demands and claims that we make on our life. That's what Bill was trying to help us see with this insight that he had. Now, those expectations then morph once again into what we think are appropriate rules about how a relationship should be. So these rules become unenforceable rules, and they turn into what I like to think of as should demands. And now we make we have all of these shoulds about how I should act, how you should act, how life should be, what feelings I should have, what feelings I shouldn't have, what feelings you should have, what feelings you should, the way you should behave, the way I should behave. And we've got all of these rules. And we think that if life would just conform to all these rules, I would just be fine. Bill talks about it in the big book, right? We're the actor who thinks we're the director. And if people would just follow our direction, wouldn't we all be happy? No, because it's not about a relationship. We want things on our way. There's not room for another person in our life when we're functioning this way. There's only room for rules. That's why he said in this step, it's so important to look at our relationships, because we can realize that the idea of a true partnership was nothing we ever had in mind. We have no idea what that looks like. You can't have a true partnership if you're making these kinds of demands on people. So our second fourth step is looking at this. We're going to also look at specifically resentments and looking at how we can unpack them. But this is what Doctors Merriam and Irv Polster say about that. They're two Gestalt therapists that ran a Gestalt therapy institute down in San Diego. They go, the party who feels transgressed against feels righteous indignation and resentment. He or she is hurt and offended. He or she demands the transgressor shall at least feel guilty for what they have done, and that strenuous efforts at apology and reparation should be made. So, this person feels sorry for himself and indulges in self-pity and commiseration. What a hard life he leads, and an insensitive and unfeeling brute is this person who has just wounded himself. To make his position even more supportable, he makes himself even more miserable and pitiable, which of course only makes him more resentment. Bill was really clear about this, is that resentment is a luxury that we cannot afford. The truth of it is, it's a luxury that no one can afford in life if you want to lead a life that's based on freedom. Because as soon as you start resenting someone, as many people have said, is you're letting that person have free rent in your head. You're moving them into your head and they're occupying your consciousness all the time. Well, we're going to try to unpack some of those resentments. Step 10, Bill talks about we got to try to stop making unreasonable demands on others. So early on, and in all my two books that are out on emotional sobriety, 12 Smart Things and 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety, I suggested this emotional dependency inventory, which I still think is very helpful. You describe an upsetting event, what your reaction to that event is, meaning what meaning did you give, did it have for you, and what does that situation say about you? Then you identify your claim or demand that's underlying your expectation or unenforceable rule, and then identifying the unhealthy dependence. I gave an example in my book about this gentleman who walked in to, after a meeting on a Wednesday night. He was at the Hermosa Beach Alano Club. He got his 6-month chip. He walks in the door. I think his wife was watching Bones that night. And he goes, honey, I got a chip. I got my 6-month chip. And she looks up and she says, so what? Well, he got really upset. He got hurt. And he started to cop a resentment towards her. He stomps up the stairs. He kept his mouth shut and he didn't go after her because he was hurt, but he went upstairs and he started to have fantasies about drinking. I'll show her. She doesn't care I got 6 months. Might as well go out and drink tonight. He had a little recovery, so he didn't do that. He paused for a second. But what he did is he just withdrew. He what we call, he stonewalled her. He wouldn't talk to her the next day. He withdrew until he came in to see me that Friday. I think that happened on a Wednesday, and he came to see me Friday, and we unpacked it. Well, what meaning did it have for him when she said, I don't care, and she looked back at the TV? Well, what it meant to him was that he wasn't important to her, that his recovery wasn't important. It meant to him that she really didn't care about him anymore. He felt terribly rejected. Now, what was his claim or demand? See, the thing that he wasn't conscious of, because he was thinking about what this meant about him, was what was going on with her that she couldn't celebrate. This was the 3rd time he got a 6-month chip. She wasn't about to jump on the bandwagon again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. This would have been time number 3 in her mind. So, what was his demand on her? He wanted her to celebrate what he was doing, regardless of the pain and suffering that she had been to and how she was protecting herself. He didn't want her to be thinking about herself at all. He wanted her to be thinking about him. His demand was, I want her to feel good about what I am doing, regardless of what I have done to her. Guys, can you see how unreasonable that is? I hope that's so obvious, right? What's the unhealthy dependence? Well, for him, the value of what he was doing was dependent on whether or not she validated his experience. When she didn't jump up and get the pom poms out and start cheerleading and stuff like that, it brought his whole, right, efforts in recovery and sobriety into question for himself. So in the last column, I said, what do you have to do to recover your balance? How do you hold on to yourself? Well, he had to remind himself, first of all, that he was doing what he was doing for himself, not to get her to celebrate him. Second, that instead of expecting her to have empathy with him, he needed to have some empathy with her and understand that what was going on, what he wanted from her was impossible right now at that point in time. And he needed to go and make amends to her and say to her, look, I am sorry I put that unreasonable demand on you to be excited about what I'm doing. I understand that I've hurt you and disappointed you, and you're protecting yourself. And that's a good thing. You can't trust me yet because I don't know if I can't trust myself yet. I'm hoping to get to that place. I want you to have faith in me. I am trying to do this thing. There's no guarantee I'm going to make it. I may make mistakes before, but at some point in time, I hope I'm going to be able to regain that trust. And I'm sorry for doing a number on you the other night and making you feel bad about how you were reacting and feeling about the situation. Now he holds on to himself. He regains his balance. He gets back his integrity. And he has some empathy for her and includes her. Now, if she was in a different place, what she would have said to him, and if she was working her Al-Anon program, she'd come back and have to make amends as well and say, I'm sorry. I was so cold and dismissive of what you said the other night. I wish I could feel good about this. I really wish I could join you in your celebration. And I do hope that this is going to be it for you and you're going to get it together now. But right now, I'm too raw from what went on. So I'm not able to give you that right now, other than to say to you, I hope that this is going to be different. So that's what she would do, and she'd make amends for not being able to do that. See, that's what a person who is now emotionally mature, how they would function in terms of a relationship. So in my new book, I kind of described it this way, right? Described what happened, describe the upsetting event, describe your reaction. How did you respond? What did it mean to you? That's so important to ask yourself. What meaning am I giving to this experience? And then identifying your expectations. What should this person have done? How are they supposed to act in order for me to feel better? Then you can start to understand what your expectation was, what they should have done or what was supposed to happen was, and that way you'll understand what your expectation was. And identifying your unhealthy dependence, you'll finish that sentence. I'm okay if that, da, 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 if in this case she would have jumped up and celebrated. And then I gave some tips on how to hold on to yourself better and how to get to that place where now we do what we call the turnaround and unhook our expectation and claim our emotional autonomy. So those are worthy. If I would encourage you, use this form. It's available on my website. We will post it next week in the chat as well for you to download the PDF. If I can do that once I jump off and Tom and I start to talk, I'll have it in there tonight for you guys. But I want to suggest another form, and I'm calling it the Emotional Dependency Inventory, focusing on resentments. And I want you to unpack your resentments in the following way. What I want you to do is, first of all, think of a person that you resent and describe the nature of your relationship with that person. Then describe the nature of your resentment by completing the incomplete sentence below until you list all of the resentments you have towards that person. I resent Bill for whatever for example, the game, I resent John for not being more understanding when I'm upset with him. That would be a typical resentment in a relationship. I resent this person for not understanding what's really going on with me and focusing on themselves. Declare the should demands underlying each of your resentment. So, for example, I demand that John should always show concern and empathy for my feelings, for me to feel loved. Wow, that's what a demand is. See, a demand totally dismisses the other person and makes the other person responsible for my feelings. That's what demands do. Underneath every resentment is a hidden demand. And it's the same thing with expectations. We can say, I resent you. And that's a way that we're not being honest about what's really going on. Because underneath that resentment is a demand. Resentment sounds like I have a right, as Dr. Bolster said. I feel hurt by what because you've done something that you weren't supposed to do. That's hurt me. So my resentment makes me feel indignant. Like I have a right and you should feel really bad and guilty that you've done that to me. But when we expose that that resentment is really based on a demand, all of a sudden our claim for righteous indignation does not get the same support, does it? It's on shaky ground. The next step in unpacking that resentment is to be more personal. You got to stop taking things personally. And you got to ask yourself, if I didn't take what, let's say in this case, John did, personally, I would see or realize that John is into himself. It doesn't have to be into where I'm at all the time for us to be okay in our relationship. Now, the real important thing is to now get the freedom from that resentment, is identifying something that you are grateful for in terms of the opportunity for growth that each resentment creates. Every resentment has an opportunity for you to identify the claim and demand, the unenforceable rules, the shoulds you have in life, and for you to begin to surrender those crippling expectations so that you can start to know what emotional freedom and emotional autonomy is all about. So, I want you guys to have that tonight, and I'll also post this if I get a chance. If not tonight, then next week when Tom's back. So, that being said, let me stop sharing my screen. I always lose sight. Did I do that already? It stopped? Julia, is this okay now?
Yep, we just see you.
Okay, good. Well, let me invite you and Tom Rutledge. And Brian, are you okay with joining us tonight?
Sure.
Where did Tom
Find
Rutledge?
Tom. He's hiding again.
Oh my God, Tom. Where art thou,
I
Tom?
see him. I see him. I got him.
All right, great.
Hi, Tom. Yep. I'll ask you to unmute.
You too, Brian.
Right. All right. Yeah, I was going to say you have to unmute me. Um, Hi, Brian.
All right, Brian, you're muted still.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Here,
can you let him?
yeah, I'll give everybody the power to unmute themselves.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi, Tom. I didn't mean to be rude and not be answering you.
Well,
Well,
don't get a
I thought
resentment. I
I
can
thought
work.
you were, so it's like, what the fuck? It's like it's we'll deal with it. I'll see you out back after the meeting.
Oh, yes, you will.
All right. Let's talk about the first step or fourth step. What are your thoughts, gentlemen and ladies?
Let me first tell you a story about Roger Andes. Because Roger's one of my filters for my little nutshells. He gives me feedback on that, and he basically is a great veto person like that. It's one of the very first people who vetoed one of my nutshells, by the way, who died recently, was Melody Beatty. In my second book, and she was reading it for me, and I appreciated it very much. But I had one of my nutshells was never accept a business card with a slightly crumpled corner. See, now some people get it, some people don't, but Alan, I knew you would. It means is the business card's been used to pick their teeth. It's like, see, yeah. But here was Melody's response. She said, "Lose the smart ass," and I've carried that through my entire career for that. But nowadays, Roger helps me, and I'm going to read one to you because it had to do with resentment, and then I'm just reading it to tell his response, and it just says. Resentment is constipated anger that has been infected. Judging others or yourself will only worsen the painful condition. Treat resentment with acceptance and compassion. Roger never got past the first part. He goes, "This is gross. Resentment is constipated anger that has been infected." He said, "Don't put that out there." he said that is gross. That's the best part. But I think I put it out there anyway. But he's nicer than I am, and I bet nobody's surprised by that.
You're just colorful, Tom.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, he says
And
it
you
differently.
are a smart ass. That's your,
Yeah, oh,
that's
yeah.
it. I mean,
Oh,
that's
thank
in
you,
your
Rob.
DNA. That's in your
Thank you,
DNA. No
thank you,
offense.
Rob. I'm sure nobody knew that, but it's no, it's true, and Roger's doing well, by the way. I know a lot of you guys ask on a regular basis about him, and he's doing well. And I'll just do this while I've got the floor. I'll just say the thing that comes to my mind, Alan, is the old Ken Kai's Handbook of Higher Consciousness from the early 70s, long before codependency lingo and that kind of stuff. And I've carried this with me. You probably have too. And we're using really clear, close to the same language. But he talked about preferences versus demands. And he said, when here, what Bill's describing is a condition, it's not okay until he says, and what he used, we would use these days the word upgrade, I think, but he used up level. He would say up level your demand to a preference. And it was just very simple. If you don't get what you demand, you're devastated and pissed off. If you don't get what you prefer, you're disappointed. And that's not other people's responsibility. That's my responsibility. Maybe I want to tell you I'm disappointed. Maybe I just need to process it myself. But that differentiation, it makes, I mean, I can go through my whole day working with clients, and I'm not saying I can't apply to myself too, but just if I would be busy if I just thought I'm just going to spend the day looking for unrealistic expectations. And helping people see them. It's like my point being, if we tend to this, it's like it's a game changer for us if we learn, and we have to learn to practice it, because not taking it personally, that's a tough thing for people to understand sometimes. It doesn't mean stuff your feelings. It doesn't mean a lot of things. We've got to talk about maybe what it means and doesn't mean, or we can do that on the podcast. But it's because it is easier said than done to not take things personally. But when you can get there, your life is easier.
Your point, when I make this point a lot too, Tom, is that you can tell the difference between a request and a demand by your reaction.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing about the Bill's letter. I've said this to you, Alan, before. It's like I cringe most anytime somebody says something in an absolute way, because I just go like, come on, nothing's always. but he states this in a very absolute way in this letter, and I cannot agree more. He says, when you are, I can't remember the words, but when you're upset or you're uncomfortable with that, if you look, you will find an unrealistic demand or an expectation. It's like, because I've talked to people, I say that, and they go look and they say, no, 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 there's nothing unrealistic about what I'm doing. And it's like, but I'm just upset because, Julia did that to me. It's like, oh, okay. So, but it
Yeah,
really
but
is that
yeah,
some things are
it's
that
like
clear.
good taste.
It's that simple.
That agrees with mine, right? I think it's good
Yeah, you're a
taste.
G. It's why we like each other,
That's
Alan.
right. It's that. But this discussion about resentment that I had tonight about underneath every resentment is a hidden
Yep.
demand. I think it's so important for us to look for
Oh
that
God, yeah.
because a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, it's not my insight. It was Fritz Perl's insight. When he has a protocol in terms of working with demands, and one of his protocols is, first of all, you state what it is that you resent, and then he says, take the word resentment out of it and replace it with demand. So if I was, let's say, with Brian, like, I resent you because you didn't call me the other day, and if I get rid of the word resentment and place demand in there, I said, I demand that you call me, and I'm upset that you didn't do it. Now I get closer to what's going on. Now I can start to really understand that I wasn't victimized by what you did. I victimized myself by the expectation that I had for how you were supposed to behave. And that's when freedom starts. When I realize that I am the determined one and that I have put myself in that place.
Right.
Yeah, I would add into that there's this a big piece about this too, that the sort of unstated expectations or like unspoken demands, they're often unspoken to the person who holds them, right? Like
Oh yeah.
the fourth step is really key in order to like notice that I have a whole lot of rules I don't even recognize that you're all breaking. And I would rather have a relationship with my resentment and my injury than with people.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's so important, Brian, because that's exactly what this is about. Is like you use your pain and your discomfort to go looking for what you can work on. It's like you don't you're not done something you're not done something wrong because you had a demand. We're humans. We do that stuff, but we're taking responsibility that way. We don't think that's why people say to me when I say, "Do you have unrealistic demand?" or they go, "No, I don't." It's like because they don't think of it that way. It seems perfectly reasonable to them. For how do you know it's a demand? Because you're upset.
Yeah, I agree. We're far more often
Oh
subtly
God, yeah.
coercive than to demand things
Oh
of people.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Great way to say it. Yeah.
Well, I'll just say my understanding of the fourth step since I first did it has changed so much. I didn't even make the connection between the inventory and how, we got the defects out of those. And, I didn't understand that, if I list down all my fears, yeah, I know I'm afraid of everything. I didn't think I had any resentment, second of all, the first time I did this. And then it wasn't clear to me what my defects were and how those were defects. And it seemed to me like an exercise just in blaming. You're bad, you have defects, that's why you're an alcoholic, and you need to get rid of them. And as I've come to understand it, the step before that is the dependence comes through the anxiety, and that leads to those behaviors and those defects, and needing to develop an awareness around all of that. And I really liked what you said also, and we've touched on it, the difference between a request or a demand, especially an unspoken demand, right? That we just expect everyone around us to know. If you love me or if you're a good person, you should know, versus a request. And then when I have a resentment, that also it empowers me to have some personal responsibility, that I can, look at, first of all, see that I have a demand, which sometimes I don't. And then, I can either request that somebody meet that, it's not a demand anymore, but meet that need, or I can, try to meet it myself, or, I have to realize that the situation, I'm not going to get what I want. And that gives me a chance to accept and to grieve that. But that's a very different process than pushing somebody away. I mean, that resentment it creates a barrier. I mean, between myself and myself, between myself and other people. Yeah.
That's good.
I'm glad you named anxiety also, Julia, because that idea of like worrying about someone is another way of trying to be enforcing on
Yep.
them. And I love that that's in what you posted tonight, Alan. Really, really.
Good point.
Yeah.
Somebody was saying in the chat, well, what's reasonable to expect in a relationship? And
Not much.
not much. Well, there's some, there's some wisdom in what you just said. I mean, the way that Dr. Kempler said it is that instead of me worrying about setting standards for other people, I need to worry about setting standards for myself.
Yeah.
And if I can focus on that, then I can create a pretty healthy atmosphere in terms of my relationship.
Right.
So
Right.
if what's important to me is that respect is important, then I need to focus on what it means for me to respect you.
Right.
And if I don't feel good about, let's say, calling you names, then I need to clean up any name calling that I'm doing.
Right.
If you're doing that, I could say I don't like it. I can say what I feel about it and what I want about it. And I can even say, look, if you need to do that, keep shouting. I'll come back later after you blow off some steam. I'm not going to stand here
Mhm.
and take that crap from you. I don't need to do that. But you need to do it. But see, it's so important that, as you said, Brian, sometimes these things are so subtly coercive that we manipulate each other thinking we're doing something good for the relationship. And what we're really doing is trying to control it.
Well, and part of the step work is bringing that to our own awareness. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're teaching ourselves how to evaluate ourselves more accurately.
Yeah.
Well, some of
It's
it can be cultural too. I mean, if I go into a house and I don't take off my shoes, or I don't take off my hat, or something like that, or I have a tattoo on my face, or something like that, that might piss off some other people, or I
Yeah.
might be pissed off if I see
Right.
or
Well, but
revolt.
our point is with that, Rob, is that that's the expectation that everybody should do what I think they should do and behave the way. And what we're talking about is kind of surrendering those. Let me,
Yeah,
let me,
and it doesn't mean you can't have feelings about it. We're gonna have those feelings, and I mean, I'm a full blown control freak in recovery. It's like, I mean, there's no maybe about it. It's like, and my ultimate place where I worked myself when somebody was asking about the relationship was my ultimate mantra with that is that Dee Dee does not have to change anything for me to love her. That's it. It's like it seems a simple thing, and you might even think, oh, I already have that idea, but it's like I didn't. And when I finally started looking at it, lost all these conditions. But the idea is, I don't need her to do anything different. I don't need her to change anything in order for me to love her. I love her. That's the foundation that's where we start. It doesn't mean I can't take care of myself, like Alan's saying. It doesn't mean, that if she's a certain way and it's not changing that and I can't live with that, then I can get out of the relationship. I can change that. But it's like it's not my job to change her, or that's what she told me.
I like what Dee Dee told you.